Have you ever been thrown out of your own home by your own daughter? At 72 years old, after working nearly half a century, I came home one day with news I had lost my job. I thought my daughter would stand by me. Instead, she told me I was worthless without money and ordered me to leave the house I built with my own two hands. I left with nothing but a small bag and $5 in my pocket. That should have been the end of me. But what happened next? One single dollar changed everything. A lottery ticket, a storm of betrayal, and a second chance at life I never saw coming. Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about money. It's about family betrayal and the shocking way I reclaimed my dignity when everyone thought I was finished. My name is Howard Ellis. For 48 years, I walked the dust and steel of construction sites in Halifax. I was a senior inspector, the man who checked every beam, every bolt, every safety measure. Through blizzards that froze the harbor solid, through blistering summers, when tar boiled on the streets, I never missed a shift. I thought loyalty meant something. I thought hard work meant security. But in this new world where machines replace men and numbers matter more than faces, loyalty is worth less than the paper it's written on. That morning, I sat across from a manager who was young enough to be my grandson. His name was Brent. 30 years old maybe. Nice suit, perfect hair, the kind of kid who'd never lifted a steel beam in his life. He kept looking at his watch while speaking to me as if my entire life's work were an inconvenience. "We appreciate your service, Mr. Ellis," he said, rehearsed and cold, "but the company is moving to automated inspection systems. Your position has been cut, as if I were a piece of frayed rope no longer useful. No handshake of gratitude could soften the sting." I wanted to tell him I still had obligations, that my daughter and my two grandchildren depended on me, that retirement wasn't a luxury I could afford. But the words jammed in my throat. I simply gathered my tools, the same battered set I had carried for decades, and walked out of the only job I had ever known. On the bus ride home, I stared out the window at streets I'd walked for a lifetime. They looked different now, colder, harsher. For the first time in decades, I wasn't heading home after a day's work. I was heading home unemployed. The last check I'd earned was already spent on bills, groceries, and ballet lessons for my granddaughter Lucy. And all that stretched ahead of me now was a pension check that barely covered utilities. I whispered a prayer into the rumbling silence of that bus, "Lord, if you still have a plan for me, please show me, because right now I can't see it." By the time I reached my house, a modest 2-story brick home I had paid for brick by brick, mortgage by mortgage, my legs felt like they were cast in lead. I opened the door, and the sound of raised voices hit me like a wave. Dana, my daughter, was shouting at Ethan, my 14-year-old grandson. "You're supposed to watch your sister. Do you want me to get another call from the school?" Ethan tried to explain about basketball practice, about how missing another session meant he'd lose his varsity spot. But Dana cut him off. In the background, 10-year-old Lucy whimpered, clutching a ballet bag almost as big as she was. Ordinary family noise. But after what I'd just been through, it felt like a wall closing in around me. I stood in the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and tried to gather my courage. Finally, I said the words I had been dreading. "Dana, I need to talk to you. I've been let go. They've automated my job. From now on, it'll be just my pension." Her face froze for half a second. Then it twisted into something I'll never forget. Not worry, Not compassion, not even shock, but anger, pure, sharp, and ugly. "What do you mean you lost your job?" She snapped, her voice already rising. "How are we supposed to live now? Not, how are you, Dad? Not, are you okay?" Her first instinct was survival, and in her mind, survival meant money. My money. I tried to stay calm. "We'll manage. We'll need to save. Maybe you could find some part-time work. Ethan's old enough to help with Lucy after school. A job." At my age, Dana cut me off, incredulous. "I haven't worked in 15 years. You expect me to go waitress in some cafe? You've ruined everything, Dad. Absolutely everything." I looked at her, and for a moment, I didn't see my daughter anymore. I didn't see the little girl with pigtails who used to run into my arms after school, her knees scraped, asking me to fix her problems with a bandage and a kiss. I saw a woman who looked at me the way a banker looks at a balance sheet, cold, calculating, already subtracting. And in that moment, the knife twisted deeper than when Brent told me I was cut. Because Brent was just a stranger. But Dana was my flesh and blood. I whispered again in my heart, "Lord, give me strength." Because my own child no longer sees me as her father, only as her failing wallet. That was the beginning of everything. If you're watching this, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, your city, your state, even your country. And don't forget to subscribe to Brian's Story for more true family drama stories that prove dignity never dies. Dana's words kept cutting sharper than any blade. She paced the kitchen like a storm, her arms folded tight across her chest. "Your pension won't even cover groceries for a week," she shouted. "Do you have any idea what it costs to feed 2 growing kids? Lucy's ballet lessons start next month. Ethan needs a new uniform. And me, I was supposed to start a massage therapy course. How do you expect us to live, Dad?" I tried to reason with her, my voice steady, though my heart was breaking. "We'll cut back. We'll save where we can. It's not the end of the world. And Dana, maybe it's time you looked for a job, even part-time, for your children's sake." That set her off like a match to gasoline. A job at 40 years old. Do you really expect me to humiliate myself serving coffee in some dingy cafe while my friends see me? I deserve better than that, Dad. I sacrificed my marriage, I sacrificed everything, and now you're telling me to go work like some nobody. Her words stung worse than the wind on a Halifax winter morning. For 3 years, I had paid for her lawyer during her divorce, renovated the house so she and the children could live comfortably, moved myself into the smallest room at the back so they could take the main floor. I had stretched my body, my savings, my very soul to hold her world together. And still, I was a selfish old man. "Dana," I said softly, struggling to keep my composure, "I've always put your needs ahead of mine. Always. From the moment you were born. But I can't create money out of thin air. We'll have to adjust. Together." She stopped, her face contorted, her voice low and deadly calm. "No, Dad. I won't adjust to poverty again. Not after what Grant put us through. I won't let my kids live like beggars because you failed to keep your job." Failed. The word hit me harder than Brent's layoff speech. "I didn't fail. They downsized. Don't you dare make excuses," she screamed, her voice echoing off the walls. "Other men your age kept their jobs. Someone was more valuable than you. You should have fought harder. But no, you gave up like always." I felt something snap inside me. That's not true. I worked for 48 years without complaint. I carried this family on my back. I paid your tuition. I paid for your wedding. I paid for your divorce. I gave you my home, Dana. And now, enough, she shrieked, slamming her hand on the counter. Stop listing everything you think you've done for me. You were supposed to. That was your duty as a father. But guess what? You failed. And I don't need you anymore. Her next words came like a death sentence. Pack your things and leave. This is my house now. Me and the kids, we don't need you dragging us down. I froze. My legs trembled. Dana, this is my home. I've lived here for 40 years. My name is on the deed. She smirked, cold and calculating. That's just a formality. Sign it over to me. The children need stability. You can find a cheap apartment on your pension. Her eyes, so much like her mother's, once now looked at me with nothing but contempt. I felt the blood drain from my face. You're kicking me out of my own house because I can't provide for you anymore. Yes, she said without hesitation. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Upstairs, I could hear Ethan and Lucy whispering, their voices laced with confusion and fear. I whispered almost to myself, Lord, give me strength. I never thought my own daughter would cast me aside like this, but Dana didn't flinch. She grabbed my old travel bag from the closet and shoved it into my hands. Leave, Dad, tonight, before the kids get too attached. We'll be fine without you. And with that, I was no longer a father in my own home. I was just a stranger standing in the doorway, holding the weight of 40 years of sacrifice in one trembling hand. The night Dana threw me out, the Halifax wind cut through my thin jacket like a blade. I walked aimlessly, clutching the travel bag she'd shoved into my hands, the straps biting into my shoulder. The streets I had known for decades suddenly felt foreign, hostile, as if they too had turned their backs on me. I had $5 left in my wallet. 5. After a lifetime of working double shifts, after paying mortgages, weddings, and lawyers' fees, all I had left to my name was a single worn bill and a bag of clothes. I thought about knocking on a neighbor's door, maybe asking to sleep on their couch for a night. But pride held me back. At 72, I had worked too hard, carried too many burdens to let the world see me broken on the sidewalk. I wandered until I saw a flickering neon sign wedged between a laundromat and a grocery store. Sea Breeze Hostel. The 3-story brick building looked like it hadn't been touched since the 1950s. The wooden steps sagged under my weight as I climbed them. Inside, a tired woman with dyed red hair sat behind the desk. "A room's $30, she said flatly. Then she looked me over my old-fashioned suit, the travel bag, the defeated slump of my shoulders. Her voice softened. "If you just need a place to rest, you can stay in the lounge downstairs. Couch isn't much, but it's $5. I swallowed my pride, pulled the last bill from my wallet, and handed it to her. "The lounge will do." She slid a key toward me. "Name's Faye. Kettle and microwave are in the lounge. Holler if you need anything." The lounge was a small, dim room with a sagging couch, a dusty television, and a coffee table stacked with old magazines. There was a fridge humming in the corner and a sign taped to the wall. "Try your luck. Lottery tickets, $1 at the front desk." I set my bag down, sat on the couch, and felt the weight of the day crash over me. My daughter's voice still echoed in my ears. "I don't need you without money. Get out." For years I had put her first, paid her bills, given her the best rooms, carried her and her children when she refused to carry herself. And in the end, she cast me aside like yesterday's newspaper. I bowed my head, whispering into the quiet, Lord, I don't know why you've left me here with nothing. But if this is the valley you want me to walk through, give me strength to keep moving. There was a knock at the door. Faye walked in carrying a tray with a steaming cup of tea and a sandwich. Thought you might be hungry, she said, setting it down. Her kindness nearly undid me. I hadn't eaten since breakfast, but it wasn't the food that filled my eyes with tears. It was being seen, if only for a moment, as a human being again. Thank you, I murmured. You're very kind. She waved it off. It's no big deal. Eat while it's warm. And with that, she left. As I chewed the sandwich, my eyes drifted back to the stack of lottery tickets under the TV. I had always called the lottery a tax for fools. I'd lectured co-workers about wasting money on odds worse than lightning strikes. Yet here I was, homeless, penniless, with nothing but one borrowed couch and a prayer. And in that moment, a thought whispered, What if $1 could buy me not riches, but hope? What if this was the sign I'd asked God for on the bus ride home? I laughed bitterly at myself. But the laughter died quickly. I had nothing left to lose. I finished the sandwich, wiped my hands, and stood. Tomorrow I would go to the desk, hand over a single coin, and by a chance, a ridiculous, impossible chance, at changing everything. That night, I lay on the sagging couch, clutching my bag like a lifeline. The hum of the fridge was my lullaby, the draft through the cracked window my companion. And as sleep pulled me under, I dreamed of Eleanor, my late wife standing in her rose garden, whispering, It's going to be all right, Howard. You're stronger than you think. If you're still with me up to this point, type 1 in the comments so I know you're following along. And make sure you're subscribed to Brian's Story. More family betrayal and redemption stories are coming every week. The next morning, I woke up on that sagging hostel couch with a stiff neck and a heavier heart. My last $5 were gone. All that remained was a quiet room, a travel bag at my feet, and the ache of betrayal that wouldn't let me breathe. When I stepped into the lobby, Faye was at the desk, flipping through a magazine. Behind her in a small, clear box, I noticed the stack of lottery tickets again. A handwritten sign dangled in front, Golden Horizon Jackpot, $6,000, only $1. I stopped. For years I had told co-workers the lottery was a fool's game, a trap for desperate people. But desperate, that was exactly what I was now. I whispered under my breath, Lord, I asked you for a sign. Is this it? Or am I just a foolish old man grasping at straws? Faye looked up and smiled. Need anything? I hesitated, then stepped forward. Yes. One Golden Horizon ticket. She blinked in surprise, then pulled a sheet from the stack. First time first, and last, I muttered, sliding a coin across the counter. My hands trembled as I held that slip of paper. 6 printed numbers, 14, 22, 39, 41, 56, 63, numbers I hadn't chosen, numbers that meant nothing yet suddenly carried the weight of eternity. The drawing's at 10 tonight, Faye said. We'll watch it in the lounge if you like. I nodded. Thank you. All day I walked the streets with that ticket tucked in my breast pocket like a talisman. I thought of Eleanor again, my wife gone 5 years now, how she used to tell me that God worked in mysterious ways. Sometimes he breaks us, Howard, she'd say, just so he can rebuild us stronger. By nightfall, Faye and I sat in the lounge, a steaming kettle between us, the television glowing blue against the faded wallpaper. My heart pounded with every announcement from the host in a glittering gown. The first number is 14. I sat up straighter. My ticket's first number. The second number, 39. I swallowed hard. 2 for 2. Faye leaned closer. The third number, 22. I gripped the paper so tightly it crumpled. My hands were shaking. The fourth number, 41. Faye gasped. Howard. That's 4. The hum of the fridge faded. The ticking clock grew louder. The fifth number, 56. I felt dizzy, my chest tight like I might collapse right there on the couch. And the final number, tonight's jackpot number, 63. For a moment the world stopped. Silence roared in my ears. Then Faye leapt from her chair, screaming, Howard, all 6. You've won! You just won $6 million! The room spun. I couldn't breathe. My eyes locked on the numbers glowing across the screen, and the truth struck me like lightning, my last dollar. My last hope had turned into freedom beyond anything I had ever dreamed. I whispered, my voice hoarse. Thank you, Lord. You heard me. For the first time in years, tears slid down my cheeks, not from loss, not from humiliation, but from sheer disbelief that a new chapter had opened. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't discarded. I had been given a second chance. 3 days later, I walked out of the Golden Horizon lottery office in downtown Halifax with trembling hands and a certificate that confirmed what still felt like a dream. After taxes, $4.2 million were mine. I had to open a brand new bank account on the spot. Imagine that 72 years old, and it was the first time I'd ever held more than a few thousand in an account at once. The banker shook my hand like I was a celebrity, but all I felt was the weight of a choice I had never known before freedom. For 2 weeks, I kept to cheap hotels, moving from one to another like a fugitive. Not because I was hiding from the world, but because I was hiding from Dana. I knew the second she discovered my winnings, she would come crawling back, suddenly repentant, suddenly family. And I couldn't face her yet. Not while my heart was still raw. Instead, I prayed. Every night I whispered, Lord, you spared me from despair. Show me where to begin again. Show me where I can live, not just survive. The answer came in the form of a realtor named Morris, who showed me houses along the coast. Most were small cottages, nothing special. But then we drove 40 minutes out of Halifax to a town called Moonlight Bay. The house stood on a rocky bluff white clapboard with a wide porch and tall windows that gazed straight into the Atlantic. The moment I stepped onto that porch, the salt air filled my lungs, and something inside me loosened as though invisible chains had fallen away. Inside the living room was bare, just wood floors and walls waiting for life to be breathed into them. But the windows, oh those windows. They framed the ocean like a painting, endless blue stretching to the horizon. Morris said, "It needs some work, but the foundation's solid." Asking price is $350,000. $350,000. A number that once would have terrified me, but now it was just a drop in a sea of possibility. I whispered under my breath, "This is it. This is the place." Within a week, the house was mine. I spent another $100,000 on repairs, new furniture, and a garden designed to honor my Eleanor. Roses, of course, her favorite. When the landscapers finished, I stood barefoot in the grass, looking out at the sea and felt her presence in the breeze. "You did well, Howard," I imagined her saying. The first morning I woke there, I brewed coffee in my new kitchen and carried the steaming mug out to the porch. The sun was rising, painting the waves gold. I bowed my head and prayed, "Thank you, Lord." I thought I was finished. But you've given me a second start. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about bills. I wasn't listening for Dana's footsteps demanding money. I wasn't haunted by the thought of being too old. I was simply alive, free with the sound of the ocean as my companion. That day I walked into the town center. Moonlight Bay was quiet, almost frozen in time. Just a small grocery, a cafe that smelled of fresh bread, a library with a single librarian who smiled when she learned my name. No one here cared about who I had been in Halifax. No one asked what I could give them. They just saw me as another soul settling by the sea. I knew then this was not just a house. This was my resurrection. The weeks in Moonlight Bay passed like a healing tide. I filled my days with quiet routines, morning coffee on the porch, afternoons, tending to Eleanor's roses, evenings, reading scripture by the fire. For the first time in decades, there was no shouting in the halls, no slammed doors, no demands for money. Just the sea, the gulls, and the creak of my rocking chair. But God, in His strange mercy, wasn't finished with me yet. One Thursday morning, I wandered into the little cafe on Main Street, the kind with mismatched chairs, chalkboard menus, and the smell of cinnamon rolls baked fresh at dawn. I was standing at the counter debating between tea and coffee when I heard a voice beside me. "You're new here." I turned. A woman, perhaps 70, stood with a book tucked under her arm. She had silver hair swept into a bun, eyes the color of sea glass, and a calmness about her that felt like the tide itself. "Yes," I said, smiling politely. "Howard Ellis. I moved in last month." "Rowena Clark," she said, offering her hand. "I've lived here nearly 15 years. Retired professor, English literature." I shook her hand, surprised by the firmness of her grip. Something warm flickered in my chest. We ended up sharing a table, talking over steaming mugs. She spoke of Shakespeare as though he were an old friend, and I told her about the beams and bricks of Halifax, about the joy of building something that lasts. She listened, really listened, in a way Dana hadn't in years. Not once did she ask what I could do for her, what I could buy, what I could give. She simply saw me. In the weeks that followed, I kept finding reasons to be near her. On Saturdays, we'd walk the shore, our steps crunching against the pebbles while the tide pulled in and out. She'd quote Tennyson, and I'd tell her stories of near accidents on scaffolds 30 stories high. Strange pair, we were a builder and a poet. But somehow the rhythm matched. One evening after a long walk, she stood with me on my porch, the sky painted with crimson streaks. I caught myself staring at her, the lines of her face lit by the last light of day. "You remind me of Eleanor," I admitted softly. "Not in looks, in presence. The way you quiet the noise in my head." Rowena's eyes softened. She laid a hand gently on my arm. "Love doesn't die with the body, Howard. Sometimes it simply changes shape. Perhaps what you feel isn't a replacement, but a continuation." Her words sank deep. For the first time since Eleanor's passing, I allowed myself to imagine that maybe, just maybe, God hadn't written the end under the chapter of love in my life. Our companionship grew into something steadier, richer. She'd bring over soup when I worked too long in the garden. I'd fix her leaky porch railing. We attended the small church together, our voices mingling in hymns. One Sunday, as we walked out of the chapel, she turned to me and said, "You know, Howard, happiness at our age isn't a luxury. It's a right. Too many people let others tell them they're finished once they turn 70. But we're not finished, are we?" I smiled, the truth burning bright inside me. No, Rowena, we're not finished at all. And standing there, the church bell tolling behind us, I felt the impossible, the rebirth, not just of my freedom, but of my heart. I had almost convinced myself that Dana was gone from my life for good. In Moonlight Bay, weeks stretched into months without a single call or letter. I thought maybe, just maybe, she had moved on, leaving me in peace to breathe again. But peace has a way of being shattered when you least expect it. It was late October, a storm rolling off the Atlantic when the knock came. Rowena and I were sitting by the fire, the rain battering the windows, the smell of her lentil soup still lingering in the air. At first I thought it was just the wind rattling the shutters. But then the knock came again, louder, insistent. I opened the door, and there she was, Dana, my daughter. Her hair plastered to her face from the rain, mascara streaked her eyes, blazing. And behind her two shapes I knew as well as my own heartbeat, Ethan and Lucy. For a moment I froze. The storm outside seemed to follow her in. "Dad," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "you've been hard to find." Rowena rose quietly from her chair, her eyes steady, protective. She glanced at me as if to ask, "Do you want me to stay?" I gave the slightest nod. Dana stepped into the living room without waiting for an invitation, shaking water from her coat. "So this is where you've been hiding. A seaside cottage, a new woman by your side, enjoying yourself while your family struggles." Her tone was accusatory, venom beneath the surface. I steadied my breath. "Dana, what do you want?" "What do I want?" She laughed bitterly. "What do you think I want, Dad? You win the lottery, disappear without a word, and leave us with nothing. I had to hire a private investigator just to find you. Do you have any idea what it cost me? What it put your grandchildren through?" Her words stung not because of their truth, but because of the manipulation woven through them. Ethan's eyes were downcast. Lucy clutched her ballet bag like a shield. They hadn't come here of their own accord, they'd been dragged. "Dana!" I said, my voice low but firm. "When you told me to leave, you made your choice. You said you didn't need me. So I left." She slammed her hand on the back of the couch. "That was before I knew you were sitting on millions. You owe us, Dad. You owe me. After everything I sacrificed, after raising 2 kids alone, you think you can just vanish into a fairy tale life with her." She flicked her chin toward Rowena. Rowena, calm as a stone in the storm, said nothing. She simply moved closer to me, her presence a silent wall of strength. I looked Dana straight in the eye. "I don't owe you money. I don't owe you this house. What I owe you is the truth you turned your back on me when I needed you most. You didn't see me as your father, you saw me as a failing wallet, and I will not let you use me again." For a heartbeat, the room went silent, except for the rain hammering the roof. Then Dana's face twisted into something hard, cold. "If you won't share it willingly," she spat, "I'll make sure the courts decide. You think a judge will let you keep it all while your own grandchildren go without?" And my stomach tightened. She had always been cunning, always quick to twist words into weapons. But this time I wasn't the same weary man who walked out of Halifax with $5 and a broken spirit. This time I had faith, dignity, and a resolve forged in fire. I straightened my voice steady. Do what you must, Dana. But know this money doesn't erase the way you treated me. And no court on earth can force me to let you trample me again. Her eyes narrowed. We'll see about that. Behind her, Ethan's gaze flickered with something fear, maybe shame. Lucy bit her lip, glancing between us, silent tears forming in her eyes. The storm outside howled, but the real storm was already in my living room. Dana's threat still hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Her chest rose and fell sharply, her fists clenched. For a moment I thought she might actually lunge at me. The storm outside pounded harder against the glass, as if the Atlantic itself were bearing witness. Then a voice broke the silence. "Stop it, Mom." Ethan, my grandson. 14 years old, shoulders hunched under his damp hoodie, but his voice carried a strength that startled even me. Dana spun on him. "Excuse me," I said. "Stop," Ethan repeated louder now, his eyes so much like mine when I was his age, locked on hers. "Grandpa's done nothing wrong. You're the one who kicked him out. You're the one who said we didn't need him. And now you want his money. That's not fair." Dana's face went pale, then flushed crimson. "Don't you dare speak to me like that. I'm your mother. You're using him." Ethan's voice cracked, but didn't falter. "And I'm sick of it. Grandpa's the only one who's ever been there for us. He took care of us when Dad left. He fixed the roof so the rain wouldn't drip on my bed. He paid for Lucy's ballet lessons. And you." His hands trembled, but he pressed on. "You treat him like a paycheck." Lucy, clutching her ballet bag, whispered through her tears, "I just want Grandpa back." Dana looked from one child to the other, her lips parted, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. The fury in her eyes flickered into something else, wounded pride, maybe fear. I stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Ethan's shoulder. "It's all right, son. You don't have to fight this battle alone." Then I turned to Dana. "Listen to me carefully," I said, my voice steady as the tide. "I will always be your father. Nothing can change that. But fatherhood does not mean servitude. It does not mean I hand over every penny of what little God has granted me while you tear me down. That ends tonight." Dana's jaw tightened. "So you're choosing her?" She jabbed a finger toward Rowena. "Some stranger you barely know over your own blood." I shook my head. "I'm choosing dignity. I'm choosing peace. I'm choosing to spend the years I have left not as a wallet or a scapegoat, but as a man, a grandfather, a believer in second chances. If you want to be in my life, Dana, it will be without demands, without manipulation." Otherwise, I gestured toward the door, the rain still pouring beyond it. "Otherwise, you'll walk back into the storm you brought with you." For a long moment, she said nothing. Her chest heaved, her eyes darting between me, Rowena, and the children. Finally, she grabbed her coat, yanking it tight around her. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You'll regret this." She stormed out into the night, the wind slamming the door behind her. Ethan and Lucy stood frozen, their faces pale. I pulled them into my arms, both of them shaking. "You are always welcome here," I whispered. "Always. Remember that." Rowena laid a hand on my back. Her touch steady, her presence an anchor in the storm. As I held my grandchildren close, I realized something with bone-deep certainty. I had finally drawn the line. For the first time in my life, I had told Dana no and meant it. And though the storm outside raged inside me, there was calm. because dignity once reclaimed cannot be taken again. 6 months passed, like waves rolling against the shore, sometimes calm, sometimes crashing, but always moving me farther from the storm of that night. Life in Moonlight Bay settled into a rhythm I hadn't known in years. Morning coffee on the terrace, sea air crisp against my face. Long walks with Rowena hand in hand, our silence more comforting than words. Evenings filled with the scent of her garden herbs and the laughter of neighbors who treated me not as a burden, but as one of their own. And then there were the letters. Every 2 weeks, like clockwork, Ethan's handwriting appeared in my mailbox. Careful, neat lines that spoke more maturity than his 14 years should have carried. Grandpa, we won the district tournament. Lucy's in a new ballet program. She says she dances better when she imagines you clapping in the audience. Mom still gets angry when your name comes up, but I think she's changing. A little. I kept every letter in a wooden box Rowena gave me. Sometimes at night I'd reread them by lamplight, the words like balm to a wound that still ached, but was healing. Then one spring morning, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something in my chest told me to answer. Dad Dana's voice, quieter than I'd ever heard it. Hesitant, almost brittle. For a moment I couldn't speak. The silence stretched until she filled it. I've been seeing a counselor, she said quickly, as if afraid I'd hang up. Ethan called me out. Said I sounded like those toxic parents they teach about in school. It cut deep, but he was right. I've been awful. To you, to the kids. I'm trying to do better. Her words didn't come wrapped in excuses this time. No anger, no demands. Just raw, stumbling honesty. I don't expect forgiveness overnight, she continued. I wanted you to know I'm sorry. Really sorry. I leaned against the window frame, watching the waves crash far below. My heart wrestled between doubt and hope. How many times had she twisted words before? But this sounded different. Rowena stepped softly into the room, her presence grounding me. I met her eyes. She gave the smallest nod as if to say, "Listen, but don't lose yourself." I cleared my throat. "Thank you for saying that, Dana. It means more than you know." There was a pause. Then almost shyly, "The kids miss you. Ethan talks about you all the time. Lucy drew a picture of you and put it by her bed. Maybe you could come for a visit. Just for a day." Hope surged, but caution held me steady. "We'll see," I said gently, one step at a time. When I hung up, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. But sometimes it plants a seed for a different future. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe that Dana might be capable of change. Still, I knew one truth with unshakable certainty: whether she changed or not, I would never surrender my dignity again. The summer sun lingered long into the evening, painting the ocean in streaks of gold and rose. Rowena and I sat together on the terrace, the air sweet with the smell of roses she had planted along the fence line. In the distance, I could hear children laughing on the beach, their voices carried by the wind like a hymn of hope. On the table beside me lay Ethan's latest letter. He'd written that Lucy was preparing for her first solo in ballet, and that he'd been elected captain of his basketball team. "Grandpa," he wrote, "I think Mom's changing. Slowly. She doesn't yell when we mention you anymore. Sometimes she just goes quiet. But that's better than before." I folded the letter carefully, placing it back in the wooden box with the others. Every word from my grandson was a reminder that even in the darkest family storms, love can find a way to endure. Rowena reached for my hand. "You look lighter," she said softly. "I am," I admitted. For years I carried the weight of believing I had to provide for everyone, even at the cost of myself. But losing everything and then gaining it back in a way I never expected taught me something. She tilted her head, waiting. That dignity isn't given. It's claimed. And once you reclaim it, no one can take it from you again. Not even your own flesh and blood. The waves crashed below, as if to punctuate my words. I thought of Dana, of the rage in her eyes that night, of her trembling voice on the phone 6 months later. Maybe she would change. Maybe she wouldn't. That choice was hers, but me, I had already changed. I had built a life of peace, love, and self-respect. I had found companionship in Rowena laughter, in the simple joys of Moonlight Bay, and purpose in being a grandfather my grandchildren could still look up to. And for the first time in decades, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. I turned to the camera of my mind, the way I now often thought of these moments, as if I were speaking not just to my family, but to anyone listening. To you. Maybe you know what it feels like, I said quietly. To be cast aside when you no longer serve someone else's needs. Maybe you've been told you're useless, invisible, unwanted. But let me tell you this, you are none of those things. You are worthy. You are enough. And it's never too late to claim your dignity back. Rowena squeezed my hand. The horizon swallowed the last of the sun, leaving behind a sky full of stars. And in that vast silence, I felt at peace. Because the truth was simple but unshakable. I had lost a house, but I had gained a home. I had lost the illusion of family, but I had found love and honesty. And I had lost my old self, the tired man, begging for scraps of gratitude. But in his place stood someone freer, stronger, and finally alive. And that I realized was the real lottery I had won. As I sit here tonight, listening to the steady rhythm of the waves outside my window, I realize that life's greatest victories don't always come in the form of money or houses. They come in the form of peace, of freedom, of dignity reclaimed. My daughter once told me I was worth nothing without a paycheck. That night, she stripped me of everything I thought I had left: my home, my role as a father, even my pride. But what she didn't know was that by losing it all, I gained the chance to build something truer. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about how a man, even in his 70s, can rise from humiliation, fight for self-respect, and find love again. It's about family drama stories that cut deep, but also about second chances, redemption, and the quiet power of saying no more. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. Whether you've been cast aside, silenced, or treated as though your worth has expired, remember this: dignity never dies. Not in betrayal stories, not in grandma stories, not in any true stories of family and life. It lives as long as you choose to protect it. So I'll end with this thought. The real lottery I won wasn't the $5 million. It was the freedom to live on my own terms, to love without fear, and to leave behind a legacy of strength, not silence. And that, my friends, is a prize no one can ever take away. If this message spoke to you, please share your thoughts below and subscribe to Brian's Story. More family drama stories, betrayal stories, and true stories of dignity and redemption are coming your way.